The Dhammapada. Translation by Gil Fronsdal. Chapter 1. Dichotomies. All experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, made by mind. Speak or act with a corrupted mind, and suffering follows, as the wagon wheel follows the hoof of the ox. All experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, made by mind. Speak or act with a peaceful mind, and happiness follows, like a never-departing shadow. He abused me, attacked me, defeated me, robbed me. For those carrying on like this, hatred does not end. She abused me, attacked me, defeated me, robbed me. For those not carrying on like this, hatred ends. Hatred never ends through hatred. By non-hate alone does it end. This is an ancient truth. Many do not realize that we here must die. For those who realize this, their quarrels end. Whoever lives focused on the pleasant, senses unguarded, immoderate with food, lazy and sluggish, will be overpowered by Mara as a weak tree is bent in the wind. Whoever lives focused on the unpleasant, senses guarded, moderate with food, faithful and diligent, these will not be overpowered by Mara, as a stone mountain is unmoved by the wind. Whoever is defiled and devoid of self-control and truth, yet wears the saffron robe, is unworthy of the saffron robe. Whoever has purged the defilements, is self-controlled, truthful, and well-established in virtue, is worthy of the saffron robe. Those who consider the inessential to be essential and see the essential as inessential don't reach the essential, living in the field of wrong intention. Those who know the essential to be essential and the inessential as inessential reach the essential, living in the field of right intention. As rain penetrates an ill-thatched house, so lust penetrates an uncultivated mind. As rain does not penetrate a well-thatched house, so lust does not penetrate a well-cultivated mind. One who does evil grieves in this life, grieves in the next, grieves in both worlds. Seeing one's own defiled acts brings grief and affliction. One who makes merit rejoices in this life, rejoices in the next, rejoices in both worlds. Seeing one's own pure acts brings joy and delight. One who does evil is tormented in this life, tormented in the next, is tormented in both worlds. Here he is tormented knowing, I have done evil. Reborn in realms of woe, he is tormented all the more. One who makes merit is delighted in this life, delighted in the next, is delighted in both worlds. Here she is delighted knowing, I have made merit. Reborn in realms of bliss, she delights all the more. One who recites many teachings, but, being negligent, doesn't act accordingly, like a cowherd counting others' cows, does not attain the benefits of the contemplative life. One who recites but a few teachings, yet lives according to the Dharma, abandoning passion, ill will, and delusion, aware and with mind well freed, not clinging in this life or the next, attains the benefits of the contemplative life. Chapter 2. Vigilance. Vigilance is the path to the deathless. Negligence, the path to death. The vigilant do not die. The negligent are as if already dead. Knowing this distinction, vigilant sages rejoice in vigilance, delighting in the field of the noble ones. Absorbed in meditation, persevering, always steadfast, the wise touch Nirvana, the ultimate rest from toil. Glory grows for the person who is energetic and mindful, pure and considerate in action, restrained and vigilant, and who lives the Dharma. Through effort, vigilance, restraint, and self-control, the wise person can become an island no flood will overwhelm. Unwise, foolish people give themselves over to negligence. The wise protect vigilance as their greatest treasure. Don't give yourself to negligence. Don't devote yourself to sensual pleasure. Vigilant and absorbed in meditation, one attains abundant happiness. Driving away negligence with vigilance, ascending the tower of insight and free of sorrow, a sage observes the sorrowing masses, as someone standing on a mountain observes fools on the ground far below. Vigilant among the negligent, wide awake among the sleeping, the wise one advances like a swift horse, leaving a weak one behind. With vigilance, Indra became the greatest of the gods. The gods praise vigilance, forever rejecting negligence. The monastic who delights in vigilance and fears negligence advances like a fire, burning fetters subtle and gross. The monastic who delights in vigilance and fears negligence is incapable of backsliding and is quite close to Nirvana. Chapter 3. The Mind. The restless, agitated mind, hard to protect, hard to control, the sage makes straight, as a fletcher the shaft of an arrow. Like a fish out of water, thrown on dry ground, the mind thrashes about, trying to escape Mara's command. The mind, hard to control, flighty, alighting where it wishes, one does well to tame. The disciplined mind brings happiness. The mind, hard to see, subtle, alighting where it wishes, the sage protects. The watched mind brings happiness. Far-ranging, solitary, incorporeal and hidden is the mind. Those who restrain it will be freed from Mara's bonds. For those who are unsteady of mind, who do not know true Dharma, those whose serenity wavers, wisdom does not mature. For one who is awake, whose mind isn't overflowing, whose heart isn't afflicted, and who has abandoned both merit and demerit, fear does not exist. Knowing his body to be like a clay pot, establishing this mind like a fortress, one should battle Mara with the sword of insight, protecting what has been won, clinging to nothing. All too soon this body will lie on the ground, cast aside, deprived of consciousness, like a useless scrap of wood. Whatever an enemy may do to an enemy, or haters one to another, far worse is the harm from one's own wrongly directed mind. Neither mother nor father, nor any other relative can do one as much good as one's own well-directed mind. Chapter 4. Flowers. Who will master this world and the realms of Yama and the gods? Who will select the well-taught Dharma teaching as a skilled person selects a flower? One in training will master this world and the realms of Yama and the gods. One in training will select a well-taught Dharma teaching as a skilled person selects a flower. Knowing this body is like foam, fully awake to its mirage-like nature, cutting off Mara's flowers, one goes unseen by the King of Death. Death sweeps away the person obsessed with gathering flowers, as a great flood sweeps away a sleeping village. The person obsessed with gathering flowers, insatiable for sense pleasures, is under the sway of death. As a bee gathers nectar and moves on without harming the flower, its color, or its fragrance. Just so should a sage walk through a village. Do not consider the faults of others, or what they have or haven't done. Consider rather what you yourself have or haven't done. Like a beautiful flower, brightly colored but lacking scent, so are well-spoken words, fruitless when not carried out. Like a beautiful flower, brightly colored and with scent, so are well-spoken words, fruitful when carried out. Just as from a heap of flowers many garlands can be made, so you, with your mortal life, should do many skillful things. The scent of flowers, sandalwood, jasmine, and rosebay, doesn't go against the wind. But the scent of a virtuous person does travel against the wind. It spreads in all directions. The scent of virtue is unsurpassed, even by sandalwood, rosebay, water lily, and jasmine. Slight is the scent of rosebay and sandalwood, but the scent of the virtuous is supreme, drifting even to the gods. Mara does not find the path of those endowed with virtue, living with vigilance and freed by right understanding. As a sweet-smelling lotus, pleasing to the heart, may grow in a heap of rubbish discarded along the highway, so a disciple of the fully awakened one shines with wisdom amid the rubbish heap of blind, common people. Chapter 5. The Fool. Night is long for one lying awake. 7 miles is long for one exhausted. Samsara is long for fools, ignorant of true Dharma. If, while on your way, you meet no one your equal or better, steadily continue on your way alone. There is no fellowship with fools. A fool suffers thinking, I have children, I have wealth. One's self is not even one's own. How then are children? How then is wealth? A fool, conscious of her foolishness, is to that extent wise. But a fool who considers himself wise is the one to be called a fool. A fool associating with a sage, even if for a lifetime, will no more perceive the Dharma than a spoon will perceive the taste of the soup. A discerning person who associates with a sage, even if for a brief moment, will quickly perceive the Dharma, as the tongue perceives the taste of the soup. Fools with no sense go about as their own enemies, doing evil deeds that bear bitter fruit. No deed is good that one regrets having done, that results in weeping and a tear-streaked face. The deed is good that one doesn't regret having done, that results in joy and delight. As long as evil has not borne fruit, the fool thinks it is like honey. But when evil does bear fruit, then the fool suffers. The foolish ascetic who month after month eats food with the tip of a blade of grass is not worth a fraction of a person who has fathomed the Dharma. Like fresh milk, evil deeds do not immediately curdle. Rather, like fire covered with ash, they follow the fool, smoldering. Reasoning is harmful to fools. It ruins their good fortune and splits open their heads. Fools will want unwarranted status, deference from fellow monks, authority in the monasteries, and homage from good families. Let both householders and renunciants believe that I did this. Let them obey me in every task. Such are the thoughts of a fool who cultivates desire and pride. The way to material gain is one thing, the path to Nirvana another. Knowing this, a monk who is the Buddha's disciple should not delight in being venerated, but cultivate solitude instead. Chapter 6. The Sage. Like someone pointing to treasure is the wise person who sees your faults and points them out. Associate with such a sage. Good will come of it, not bad, if you associate with one such as this. Let one such as this advise you, instruct you, and restrain you from rude behavior. Such a person is pleasing to good people, but displeasing to the bad. Do not associate with evil friends. Do not associate with the lowest of people. Associate with virtuous friends. Associate with the best of people. One who drinks in the Dharma sleeps happily with a clear mind. The sage always delights in the Dharma taught by the noble ones. Irrigators guide water. Fletchers shape arrows. Carpenters fashion wood. Sages tame themselves. As a solid mass of rock is not moved by the wind, so a sage is unmoved by praise or blame. As a deep lake is clear and undisturbed, so a sage becomes clear upon hearing the Dharma. Virtuous people always let go. They don't prattle about pleasures and desires. Touched by happiness and then by suffering, the sage shows no sign of being elated or depressed. A person who would not wish for success by unethical means, not for the sake of oneself, not for the sake of others, not with hopes for children, wealth, or kingdom, is a person of virtue, insight, and truth. Few are the people who reach the other shore. Many are the people who run about on this shore. But those who are in accord with the Dharma, with the well-taught Dharma, will go beyond the realm of death, so hard to cross. Giving up dark ways, sages cultivate the bright. They go from home to homelessness, to the solitude so hard to enjoy. There they should seek the light, abandoning sensual desires, having nothing. Sages should cleanse themselves of what defiles the mind. Those who fully cultivate the factors of awakening give up grasping, enjoy non-clinging, and have destroyed the toxins, are luminous and completely liberated in this life. Chapter 7. The Arahant. For someone at the journey's end, freed of sorrow, liberated in all ways, released from all bonds, no fever exists. The mindful apply themselves. They don't amuse themselves in any abode. Like swans flying from a lake, they abandon home after home. Like the path of birds in the sky, it is hard to trace the path of those who do not hoard, who are judicious with their food, and whose field is the freedom of emptiness and signlessness. Like the path of birds in the sky, it is hard to trace the path of those who have destroyed their toxins, who are unattached to food, and whose field is the freedom of emptiness and signlessness. Even the gods cherish those who are without toxins, who have abandoned conceit and whose senses are calm, like horses well tamed by the charioteer. For a person who like the earth is untroubled, who is well practiced, who is like a pillar of Indra, who is like a lake without mud, there is no more wandering. Calm in mind, speech, and action, and released through right understanding, such a person is fully at peace. The person who has gone beyond faith, knows the unmade, has severed the link, destroyed the potential for rebirth, and eliminated clinging, is the ultimate person. The person who has gone beyond faith, knows the unmade, has severed the link, destroyed the potential for rebirth, and eliminated clinging, is the ultimate person. In village, in forest, in lowland, in highland, delightful is the place where the Arahant dwells. Delightful are forests where the public does not delight, for the passion-free delight, not seeking sensual pleasure. Chapter 8. Thousands. Better than 1,000 meaningless statements is one meaningful word, which having been heard, brings peace. Better than 1,000 meaningless verses is one meaningful line of verse, which having been heard, brings peace. Better than reciting 100 meaningless verses is one line of Dharma, which having been heard, brings peace. Greater in combat than a person who conquers 1,000 times 1,000 people is the person who conquers herself. Certainly it is better to conquer oneself than others. For someone who is self-restrained and always lives with mastery, neither a god, a Gandhava, nor Mara and Brahma together could turn conquest into defeat. Better than 1,000 ritual sacrifices offered every month for 100 years is one moment's homage offered to one who has cultivated herself. Better than 100 years in the forest tending a ritual fire is one moment's homage offered to one who has cultivated himself. Whatever sacrifice or offering a merit seeker might perform in an entire year is not worth 1/4 as much as expressing respect to those who are upright. For the person who shows respect and always reveres worthy people, 4 things increase: lifespan, beauty, happiness, and strength. Better than 100 years lived with an unsettled mind, devoid of virtue, is one day lived virtuous and absorbed in meditation. Better than 100 years lived with an unsettled mind, devoid of insight, is one day lived with insight and absorbed in meditation. Better than 100 years lived lazily and lacking in effort is one day lived with vigor and exertion. Better than 100 years lived without seeing the arising and passing of things is one day lived seeing their arising and passing. Better than 100 years lived without seeing the deathless is one day lived seeing the deathless. Better than 100 years lived without seeing the ultimate Dharma is one day lived seeing the ultimate Dharma. Chapter 9. Evil. Be quick to do good. Restrain your mind from evil. When one is slow to make merit, one's mind delights in evil. Having done something evil, don't repeat it. Don't wish for it. Evil piled up brings suffering. Having done something meritorious, repeat it. Wish for it. Merit piled up brings happiness. Even an evildoer may see benefit as long as the evil has yet to mature. But when the evil has matured, the evildoer will meet with misfortune. A doer of good may meet evil fortune as long as the good has yet to mature. But when the good has matured, the doer of good will meet with good fortune. Don't disregard evil thinking. It won't come back to me. With dripping drops of water, even a water jug is filled. Little by little, a fool is filled with evil. Don't disregard merit thinking, it won't come back to me. With dripping drops of water, even a water jug is filled. Little by little, a sage is filled with merit. As a merchant, carrying great wealth in a small caravan avoids a dangerous road. As someone who loves life avoids poison, so should you avoid evil deeds. A hand that has no wounds can carry poison. Poison does not enter without a wound. There are no evil consequences for one who does no evil. Like fine dust thrown against the wind, evil comes back to the fool who harms a person who is innocent, pure, and unblemished. Some are reborn in a womb. Evildoers are reborn in hell. People of good conduct go to heaven. Those without toxins are fully released in Nirvana. You will not find a spot in the world, not in the sky, not in the ocean, not inside a mountain cave, where you will be free from your evil karma. You will not find a spot in the world, not in the sky, not in the ocean, not inside a mountain cave, where death will not overtake you. Chapter 10. Violence. All tremble at violence. All fear death. Seeing others as being like yourself, do not kill or cause others to kill. All tremble at violence. Life is dear for all. Seeing others as being like yourself, do not kill or cause others to kill. If desiring happiness, you use violence to harm living beings who desire happiness, you won't find happiness after death. If desiring happiness, you do not use violence to harm living beings who desire happiness, you will find happiness after death. Don't speak harshly to anyone. What you say will be said back to you. Hostile speech is painful, and you will meet with retaliation. If like a broken bell, you do not reverberate, then you have attained nirvana, and no hostility is found in you. As with a stick, a cowherd drives cows to pasture, so aging in death drives the lives of beings. Even while doing evil, fools are ignorant of it. Like someone burned by fire, those lacking wisdom are scorched by their own deeds. Whoever uses violence to harm the non-violent and innocent quickly goes to one of 10 conditions: intense pain or great loss, bodily injury or insanity, serious illness or vicious slander, oppression from rulers or the loss of relatives, houses consumed by fire or wealth destroyed, and with the breakup of the body, the unwise one falls to hell. No nakedness or matted hair, no filth, dust, or dirt, no fasting or sleeping on bare ground, no austerities in a squatting posture purify a mortal who has not overcome doubt. Even though well adorned, if one lives at peace, calmed, controlled, assured, chaste, having given up violence toward all beings, then one is a Brahmin, a renunciant, a monastic. Where in this world does one find someone restrained by conscience, who knows little of blame, as a good horse knows little of the whip? Like a good horse, alert to the whip, be ardent and alarmed, with faith, virtue, effort, concentration and discernment, accomplished in knowledge and good conduct, mindful, you will leave this great suffering behind. Irrigators guide water, fletchers shape arrows, carpenters fashion wood, the well-practiced tame themselves. Chapter 11. Old Age. Why the laughter? Why the joy when flames are ever burning? Surrounded by darkness, shouldn't you search for light? Look at this beautified body, a mass of sores propped up, full of illness, the object of many plans, with nothing stable or lasting. This body is worn out, so fragile, a nesting ground for disease. When life ends in death, this putrid body dissolves. What is the delight in seeing these dull white bones, tossed away like white gourds in autumn? This city is built of bones, plastered with blood and flesh, and filled with aging, death, conceit, and hypocrisy. Even the splendid chariots of the royalty wear out. So too does the body decay. But the Dharma of the virtuous doesn't decay, for it is upheld when the virtuous teach it to good people. The person of little learning grows old like an ox. The flesh increases, but insight does not. Through many births I have wandered on and on, searching for but never finding the builder of this house. To be born again and again is suffering. House builder, you are seen. You will not build a house again. All the rafters are broken, the ridgepole destroyed. The mind gone to the unconstructed has reached the end of craving. Those who have neither lived the chaste life nor gained wealth in their youth waste away like frail herons in a lake devoid of fish. Those who have neither lived the chaste life nor gained wealth in their youth lie around like arrows misfired from a bow, lamenting the past. Chapter 12. Oneself. If one knew oneself to be precious, one would guard oneself with care. The sage will watch over herself in any part of the night. In first establishing himself in what is proper, and only then teaching others, the sage will not be stained. As one instructs others, so should one do oneself. Only the self-controlled should restrain others. Truly, it's hard to restrain oneself. Oneself indeed is one's own protector. What other protector could there be? With self-control, one gains a protector hard to obtain. By oneself alone is evil done. Born of oneself, produced by oneself, it grinds down those devoid of wisdom, as a diamond grinds down a gem. They who cover themselves with their own corrupt conduct, like a creeper covers a tree, do to themselves what an enemy wishes for them. It's easy to do what is not good and things that harm oneself. It's very difficult to do things beneficial and good. The unwise who rely on evil views to malign the teachings of the noble Arahants who live in the Dharma produce fruit that destroys themselves, like the kathaka reed that dies upon bearing fruit. Evil is done by oneself alone. By oneself is one defiled. Evil is avoided by oneself. By oneself alone is one purified. Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another. Don't give up your own welfare for the sake of others' welfare, however great. Clearly know your own welfare and be intent on the highest good. Chapter 13. The World. Do not follow an inferior way. Don't live with negligence. Do not follow a wrong view. Don't be engrossed in the world. Rouse yourself. Don't be negligent. Live the Dharma, a life of good conduct. One who lives the Dharma is happy in this world and the next. Live the Dharma, a life of good conduct. Don't live a life of bad conduct. One who lives the Dharma is happy in this world and in the next. If one sees the world as a bubble, if one sees it as a mirage, one won't be seen by the King of Death. Come look on this world as a beautified royal chariot. Fools flounder in it, but the discerning do not cling. Whoever recovers from doing evil by doing something wholesome illuminates the world, like the moon set free from a cloud. Whoever replaces an evil deed with what is wholesome illuminates the world, like the moon set free from a cloud. Blind is this world. Few see clearly here. As birds who escape from nets are few, few go to heaven. Swans travel the path of the sun. Those with psychic powers travel through space. The wise travel forth from the world, having conquered Mara and his army. For people who speak falsely, who transgress in this one way, and who reject the world beyond, there is no evil they won't do. Fools don't praise generosity. Misers don't go into the world of gods. The wise rejoice in generosity and so find happiness in the hereafter. Absolute rule over the earth, going to heaven, supreme sovereignty over all worlds, the fruit of stream entry surpasses them all. Chapter 14. The Buddha. The Buddha's victory cannot be undone. No one in the world can approach it. By what path would you guide him who has no path, whose field is endless? The Buddha has no ensnaring, embroiling, craving to lead him. By what path would you guide him who has no path, whose field is endless? Even the gods envy the awakened ones, the mindful ones, the wise ones who are intent on meditation and delight in the peace of renunciation. It is difficult to be born a human. Difficult is the life of mortals. It is difficult to hear the true Dharma. Difficult is the arising of Buddhas. Doing no evil, engaging what's skillful and purifying one's mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. Patient endurance is the supreme austerity. The Buddhas say that Nirvana is supreme. The one who injures others is no renunciant. The one who harms another is no contemplative. Not disparaging others, not causing injury, practicing restraint by the monastic rules, knowing moderation in food, dwelling in solitude, and pursuing the higher states of mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. Not even with a shower of gold coins will we find satisfaction in sensual craving. knowing that sensual cravings are suffering, that they bring little delight. The sage does not rejoice even in divine pleasures. One who delights in the ending of craving is a disciple of the fully awakened one. People threatened by fear go to many refuges, to mountains, forests, parks, trees, and shrines. None of these is a secure refuge. None is a supreme refuge. Not by going to such a refuge is one released from all suffering. But when someone going for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha sees with the right insight the Four Noble Truths, suffering, the arising of suffering, the overcoming of suffering, and the Eightfold Path leading to the end of suffering, then this is the secure refuge. This is the supreme refuge. By going to such a refuge, one is released from all suffering. It's hard to find a noble person. Such a person is not born everywhere. When such a wise one is born, the family flourishes in happiness. Happy is the arising of the Buddhas. Happy is the teaching of the true Dharma. Happy is the harmony of the Sangha. Happy is the ardent practice of those in harmony. The merit of worshiping those worthy of worship, be they Buddhas or disciples, who have transcended their obsessive thinking, passed beyond sorrow and grief, gone to peace, and who have nothing to fear, can never be calculated by any estimation. Chapter 15. Happiness. Ah, so happily we live without hate among those with hate. Among people who hate, we live without hate. Ah, so happily we live without misery among those in misery. Among people with misery, we live without misery. So happily we live without ambition among those with ambition. Among people who are ambitious, we live without ambition. Ah, so happily we live, we who have no attachments. We shall feast on joy, as do the radiant gods. Victory gives birth to hate. The defeated sleep in anguish, giving up both victory and defeat. Those who have attained peace sleep happily. There is no fire like lust, no misfortune like hate, no suffering like the aggregates, and no happiness higher than peace. Hunger is the foremost illness. Sankharas the foremost suffering. For one who knows this as it really is, Nirvana is the foremost happiness. Health is the foremost possession, contentment the foremost wealth, trust the foremost kinship, and nirvana the foremost happiness. Tasting the flavor of solitude and peace, one becomes free of distress and evil, drinking the flavor of Dharma joy. It's good to see the noble ones. Their company is always a delight. Free from the sight of fools, one would constantly be happy. One who keeps company with fools will grieve for a long, long time. Living with fools is painful, as is living with foes. Living with the wise is delightful, like relatives gathered together. Therefore, you should follow a good, intelligent person who is wise, insightful, learned, committed to virtue, dutiful, and noble, as the moon follows the path of the stars. Chapter 16. The Deer. Practicing what one shouldn't, not practicing what one should, having abandoned the goal, clinging to what is dear, one comes to envy those who practice. Don't get entangled with what you long for or dislike. Not seeing what you long for is suffering. So also is seeing what you dislike. Therefore, do not turn anything into something longed for then it's dreadful to lose. Without longing or dislike, no bonds exist. Longing gives rise to grief. Longing gives rise to fear. For someone released from longing, there is no grief. And from where would come fear? Affection gives rise to grief. Affection gives rise to fear. For someone released from affection, there is no grief. And from where would come fear? Infatuation gives rise to grief. Infatuation gives rise to fear. For someone released from infatuation, there is no grief. And from where would come fear? Sensual craving gives rise to grief. Sensual craving gives rise to fear. For someone released from sensual craving, there is no grief. And from where would come fear? Craving gives rise to grief. Craving gives rise to fear. For someone released from craving, there is no grief. And from where would come fear? People hold dear those who have done their own work, complete in virtue and vision, established in the Dharma, and who speak the truth. Anyone who aspires to the indescribable, whose mind is expansive and whose heart is not bound to sensual craving, is called one bound upstream. Relatives, friends, and companions rejoice when a long-absent person returns from afar. Just so, in passing from this world to the next, the merit we have made receives us as a family does the return of a beloved relative. Chapter 17. Anger. Give up anger. Give up conceit. Pass beyond every fetter. There is no suffering for one who possesses nothing, who doesn't cling to body and mind. The one who keeps anger in check as it arises, as one would a careening chariot, I call a charioteer. Others are merely rein holders. Conquer anger with non-anger. Conquer wickedness with goodness. Conquer stinginess with giving. And a liar with truth. If one speaks the truth, is not angry, and gives when asked, even when one has little, then one comes into the presence of the gods. Sages who do no harm, constantly restrained in body, go to the immovable state where they do not grieve. For the ever wakeful, training day and night, intent on Nirvana, the toxins disappear. Ancient is this saying, O Atula. It is not just of today. They find fault in one sitting silently. They find fault in one speaking much. They find fault in one speaking moderately. No one in this world is not found at fault. No person can be found who has been, is, or will be only criticized or only praised. Who is worthy enough to find fault in one who is like a coin of the finest gold, blameless in conduct, intelligent, endowed with insight and virtue, praised by the wise after being observed day after day? Such a one is praised even by the gods, even by Brahma. Guard against anger erupting in your body. Be restrained with your body. Letting go of bodily misconduct, practice good conduct with your body. Guard against anger erupting in your speech. Be restrained with your speech. Letting go of verbal misconduct, practice good conduct with your speech. Guard against anger erupting in your mind. Be restrained with your mind. Letting go of mental misconduct, practice good conduct with your mind. The wise are restrained in body, restrained in speech. The wise are restrained in mind. They are fully restrained. Chapter 18. Corruption. You are now like a yellowed leaf. Yama's henchmen are standing by. You stand at the door of death with no provisions for the journey. Make an island for yourself. Be quick in making effort. Be wise. unblemished with corruption removed, you'll enter the divine realm of the noble ones. You are now at the end of life. You're headed for Yama's presence with no resting place along the way, no provisions for the journey. Make an island for yourself. Be quick in making effort. Be wise. Unblemished with corruption removed, you'll experience birth and old age no more. As a smith does with silver, the wise person gradually, bit by bit, moment by moment, removes impurities from herself. As rust corrupts the very iron that formed it, so transgressions lead their doer to states of woe. Oral teachings become corrupted when not recited. Homes are corrupted by inactivity. Sloth corrupts physical beauty. Negligence corrupts a guardian. Bad conduct is corruption in a person. Stinginess, corruption in a giver. Evil traits corrupt people in both this world and the next. More corrupt than these is ignorance, the greatest corruption. Having abandoned this corruption, monks remain corruption-free. Easy is life for someone without conscience. Bold as a crow, obtrusive, deceitful, reckless, and corrupt. Difficult is life for someone with conscience, always searching for what's pure, discerning, sincere, cautious, and clean living. One digs up one's own root here in this very world if one kills, lies, steals, goes to another's spouse, or gives oneself up to drink and intoxicants. Good person, know this. Evil traits are reckless. Don't let greed and wrongdoing oppress you with long-term suffering. According to their faith, according to their satisfaction, people give. This being the case, if one is envious of the food and drink given to others, one does not obtain samadhi by day or by night. But by cutting out, uprooting, and discarding this envious state, one gains samadhi by day or by night. There's no fire like lust, no grasping like hate, no snare like delusion, no river like craving. It's easy to see the faults of others, but hard to see one's own. One sifts out the faults of others like chaff, but conceals one's own, as a cheat conceals a bad throw of the dice. If one focuses on others' faults and constantly takes offense, one's own toxins flourish, and one is far from their destruction. No path exists in space. No contemplatives exist outside the Buddha's path. People are enamored with obsessive thoughts. Tathagatas are free of obsessive thinking. No path exists in space. No contemplatives exist outside the Buddha's path. No created things are eternal. No agitation exists for Buddhas. Chapter 19. The Just. One is not just who judges a case hastily. A wise person considers both what is and isn't right. Guiding others without force, impartially, and in accord with the Dharma, one is called a guardian of the Dharma, intelligent and just. One is not wise only because one speaks a lot. One who is peaceful without hate and fearless is said to be wise. One does not uphold the Dharma only because one speaks a lot. Having heard even a little, if one perceives the Dharma with one's own body and is never negligent of the Dharma, then one is indeed an upholder of the Dharma. Gray hair does not make one an elder. Someone ripe only in years is called an old fool. It's through truth, Dharma, harmlessness, restraint, and self-control that the wise one purged of impurities is called an elder. Not through talk alone or by good looks does someone envious, stingy, and treacherous become a person of good character. But with these cut off, uprooted, and destroyed, a person wise and purged of faults is called of good character. Not by means of a shaven head does someone dishonest and undisciplined become a renunciant. How could someone filled with longing and greed be a renunciant? Someone who has pacified evil, small and great in every way, is, for that reason, called a renunciant. One is not a mendicant just because one begs from others, nor does one become a mendicant by taking on domestic ways. But whoever sets aside both merit and evil, lives the chaste life, and goes through the world deliberately, is called a mendicant. Not by silence does an ignorant fool become a sage. The wise person who, as if holding a set of scales, selects what's good and avoids what's evil, is, for that reason, a sage. Whoever can weigh these two sides of the world is, for that reason, called a sage. Not by harming living beings is one a noble one. By being harmless to all living beings is one called a noble one. Not with virtue or religious practice, great learning, attaining samadhi, dwelling alone, or thinking, I touch the happiness of renunciation unknown by ordinary people, should you, monk, rest assured, without having destroyed the toxins. Chapter 20. The Path. The best of paths is the Eightfold Path. The best of truths, the Four Noble Truths. The best of qualities is dispassion, and the best among gods and humans is the one with eyes to see. This is the path for purifying one's vision. There is no other. Follow it. You'll bewilder Mara. Follow it. You'll put an end to suffering. This is the path I have proclaimed, having pulled out the arrows. It is up to you to make strong effort. Tathagatas merely tell you how. Following the path, those absorbed in meditation will be freed from Mara's bonds. All created things are impermanent. Seeing this with insight, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity. All created things are suffering. Seeing this with insight, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity. All things are not self. Seeing this with insight, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity. Inactive when one should be active, lazy though young and strong, disheartened in one's resolve. Such an indolent, lethargic person doesn't find the path of insight. Watchful in speech and well restrained in mind. Do nothing unskillful with your body. Purify these three courses of action. Fulfill the path taught by the sages. Wisdom arises from spiritual practice. Without practice, it decays. Knowing this two-way path for gain and loss, conduct yourself so that wisdom grows. Cut down the forest of desire, not real trees. From the forest of desire, fear is born. Having cut down both the forest and the underbrush, monks, be deforested of desire. As long as even the slightest underbrush of desire between man and woman is not cut away, for that long the mind is bound, like a suckling calf is to its mother. Destroy attachment to self as you could an autumn lily in your fist. Cultivate the path to peace, the Nirvana taught by the well-gone one. Here I'll live during the rainy season, and here during the winter and summer. So the fool ponders, unaware of danger, intoxicated by children and cattle. That addict is swept away by death, as a sleeping village is by a great flood. Children, parents, and relatives are not protection. For someone seized by death, relatives are no protection. Knowing this, the wise person restrained by virtue should quickly clear the path to Nirvana. Chapter 21. Miscellaneous. If by giving up a lesser happiness, one could experience greater happiness, a wise person would renounce the lesser to behold the greater. Those who seek their own happiness by causing suffering for others are entangled with hostility. From hostility, they are not set free. The toxins multiply for the insolent and negligent who reject what they should do and do instead what they should not. But the toxins come to an end for those who are mindful and alert, who are constantly well engaged with mindfulness of the body, who don't resort to what they should not do, but persist in doing what they should. Having killed mother and father, 2 warrior kings, a kingdom and its subjects, the Brahmin, undisturbed, moves on. Having killed mother and father, 2 learned kings and a tiger, the Brahmin, undisturbed, moves on. Always wide awake are the disciples of Gautama, who constantly, day and night, are mindful of the Buddha. Always wide awake are the disciples of Gautama, who constantly, day and night, are mindful of the Dharma. Always wide awake are the disciples of Gautama, who constantly, day and night, are mindful of the Sangha. Always wide awake are the disciples of Gautama, who constantly, day and night, are mindful of the body. Always wide awake are the disciples of Gautama, whose minds constantly, day and night, delight in harmlessness. Always wide awake are the disciples of Gautama, whose minds constantly, day and night, delight in spiritual practice. Going forth into homelessness is difficult. It's hard to enjoy. Household life is difficult. It's painful. Living with discordant people is suffering. A traveler is subject to suffering, so don't be a traveler, and don't be subject to suffering. People endowed with faith, virtue, fame, and wealth are revered wherever they go. From afar, good people shine like the Himalaya mountains. Close up, bad people disappear like arrows shot into the night. Sitting alone, resting alone, walking alone, untiring and alone, whoever has tamed oneself will find delight in the forest. Chapter 22. Hell. Those who assert what is not true go to hell, as do those who deny what they've done. But these people of base deeds become equal after death in the world beyond. Many who wear the saffron robe have evil traits and lack restraint. By their evil deeds are these wicked people reborn in hell. Better to eat a flaming red-hot iron ball than to be an immoral and unrestrained person, feeding on the alms food of the people. Four results come to the careless person who consorts with the spouse of another: demerit, disturbed sleep, disgrace, and hell. For the frightened pair, delight is brief, and then comes demerit, rebirth in an evil state and harsh punishment from the king. Therefore, a person should not consort with another's spouse. Just as kusa grass cuts the hand that wrongly grasps it, so the renunciant life, if wrongly grasped, drags one down to hell. A lax act, corrupt practice, or chaste life lived dubiously doesn't bear much fruit. With steady effort, one should do what is to be done, because the lax renunciant stirs up even more dust. A foul deed is best not done. The foul deed torments one later. A good deed is best done, for having done it, one has no regret. Just as a fortified city is guarded inside and out, so guard yourself. Don't let a moment pass you by. Those who let the moment pass grieve when they're consigned to hell. Ashamed of what's not shameful, and not ashamed of what is. Those who take up wrong views go to a bad rebirth. Seeing danger in what's not dangerous, and not seeing danger in what is. Those who take up wrong views go to a bad rebirth. Finding fault in what's not at fault, and seeing no fault in what is. Those who take up wrong views go to a bad rebirth. But knowing fault as fault, and the faultless as the faultless, those who take up right views go to a good rebirth. Chapter 23. The Elephant. As an elephant in battle endures an arrow shot from a bow, so will I endure verbal abuse. Many people, indeed, lack virtue. The tamed elephant is the one they take into a crowd. The tamed elephant is the one the king mounts. Best among humans is the tamed person who endures verbal abuse. Excellent are tamed mules, thoroughbreds, horses of the Indus Valley, tusked elephants, and great elephants. But even more excellent are people who have tamed themselves. Not by means of these animals could one go to that place not gone to, where a self-tamed person goes by means of a well-tamed, disciplined self. The elephant called Dhammapada is hard to control when in rut. Tied down, the tusker doesn't even eat, remembering the elephant forest. The sluggish and gluttonous simpleton who sleeps and rolls about like a fat, grain-fed hog is reborn again and again. In the past, this mind went wandering, where it wished, as it liked, and as it pleased. Now I will retrain it wisely, as an elephant keeper does an elephant in rut. Delight in vigilance. Protect your own mind. Lift yourself from a bad course, like a tusker sunk in mud. If you find an intelligent companion, a fellow traveler, a sage of good conduct, you should travel together, delighted and mindful, overcoming all dangers. If you do not find an intelligent companion, a fellow traveler of good conduct and wise, travel alone, like a king renouncing a conquered kingdom, like the elephant matanga in the forest. There is no companionship with a fool. It is better to go alone. Travel alone, at ease, doing no evil, like the elephant matanga in the forest. Happiness is having friends when need arises. Happiness is contentment with whatever there is. Happiness is merit at the end of one's life. Happiness is the abandoning of all suffering. In the world, respect for one's mother is happiness, as is respect for one's father. In the world, respect for renunciants is happiness, as is respect for Brahmins. Happiness is virtue lasting through old age. Happiness is steadfast faith. Happiness is the attainment of wisdom. Not doing evil is happiness. Chapter 24. Craving. The craving of a person who lives negligently spreads like a creeping vine. Such a person leaps ever onward, like a monkey seeking fruit in the forest. Sorrow grows like grass after rain. For anyone overcome by this miserable craving and clinging to the world. Sorrow falls away like drops of water from a lotus for anyone who overcomes this miserable craving and clinging to the world. This I say to you, good fortune to all assembled here. Dig out the root of craving, as you would the fragrant root of banana grass. Don't let Mara destroy you again and again, as a torrential river breaks a reed. Just as a felled tree grows again if the roots are unharmed and strong, so suffering sprouts again and again, until the tendency to crave is rooted out. With the 36 streams of craving flowing mightily toward anything pleasing, the person of wrong views is carried away on the currents of lustful intent. The streams flow everywhere. The creeper of craving sprouts and remains. Seeing that the creeper has sprouted, use insight to cut it at the root. When desire flows, pleasure arises. Attached to happiness, seeking enjoyment, people are subject to birth and old age. Surrounded by craving, people run around like frightened hares. Held by fetters and bonds, they suffer repeatedly over a long time. Surrounded by craving, people run around like frightened hares. Seeking dispassion, a monastic should dispel craving. Though clear of the underbrush and out of the forest, someone attached to the forest runs right back to it. Come, see that free person run back into bondage. It's not a strong bond, say the wise, that is made of iron, wood, or grass. A strong bond, say the wise, is infatuation with jewels and ornaments and longing for children and spouse. That bond is heavy, elastic, and hard to loosen. Having cut even this, they go forth, free from longing, abandoning sensual pleasures. Those attached to passion are caught in a river of their own making, like a spider caught in its own web. But having cut even this, the wise set forth, free from longing, abandoning all suffering. Let go of the past. Let go of the future. Let go of the present. Gone beyond becoming, with a mind released in every way, you do not again undergo birth and old age. For people who have agitated thoughts and intense passion and who are focused on what's pleasant, craving grows more and more. Indeed, they strengthen their bonds. But those who delight in calming their thoughts are always mindful and cultivate a focus on what's unpleasant will bring an end to craving. They will cut Mara's bonds. Fearless, free of craving and without blemish, having reached the goal and destroyed the arrows of becoming, one is in one's final body. Free of craving and grasping, skilled in words and their usage, knowing the order of the teachings, what precedes and what follows. One is said to be a great person of much wisdom in one's final body. I am all-conquering, all-knowing, stained by nothing, letting go of everything, released through the destruction of craving, and having known directly on my own, whom could I point to as my teacher? The gift of Dharma surpasses all gifts. The taste of Dharma surpasses all tastes. The delight in Dharma surpasses all delights. The destruction of craving conquers all suffering. Wealth destroys those who lack in wisdom, but not those who seek the beyond. Craving wealth, those lacking wisdom destroy themselves as well as others. Weeds are the ruin of the fields. Passion is the ruin of people. So offerings to those free of passion bear great fruit. Weeds are the ruin of fields. Ill will is the ruin of people. So offerings to those free of ill will bear great fruit. Weeds are the ruin of fields. Delusion is the ruin of people. So offerings to those free of delusion bear great fruit. Weeds are the ruin of fields. Longing is the ruin of people. So offerings to those free of longing bear great fruit. Chapter 25. The Bhikkhu. Restraint of the eye is good. Good is restraint of the ear. Restraint of the nose is good. Good is restraint of the tongue. Restraint of the body is good. Good is restraint of speech. Restraint of the mind is good. Good is restraint in all circumstances. Restrained in all circumstances, the bhikkhu is released from all suffering. The one with hands restrained, feet restrained, speech restrained, who is foremost among the restrained, inwardly delighted, composed, solitary, and contented, is called a bhikkhu. Sweet is the speech of a bhikkhu who restrains his mouth, speaks insightfully, is not conceited, and illuminates the teaching and the goal. The bhikkhu who dwells in the Dharma, delights in the Dharma, reflects on the Dharma, recollects the Dharma, doesn't fall away from the true Dharma. One should not scorn what one has received, nor envy others. The mendicant who envies others doesn't become concentrated. The gods praise the mendicant who lives purely and untiringly, and who doesn't scorn what he or she receives, even if receiving just a little. Anyone who doesn't cherish as mine anything of body and mind, and who doesn't grieve for that which doesn't exist, is indeed called a bhikkhu. A bhikkhu dwelling in loving kindness and pleased with the Buddha's teachings attains happiness, the stilling of formations, the state of peace. Bhikkhu, bail out this boat. Emptied, it will move quickly for you. Cutting off passion and aversion, you will go to Nirvana. Cut off the 5 lower fetters. Let go of the 5 higher fetters. Above all, cultivate the 5 faculties. A bhikkhu who surmounts 5 attachments is called someone who has crossed the flood. Bhikkhu, be absorbed in meditation. Don't be negligent. Don't let your mind whirl about in sensual desire. Don't be negligent and swallow a molten iron ball, and then being burnt cry out, "This is suffering." There is no meditative absorption for one without insight. There is no insight for one without meditative absorption. With both, one is close to Nirvana. For a bhikkhu with a peaceful mind, who enters an empty dwelling and clearly sees the true Dharma, there is superhuman joy. Fully knowing the arising and passing of the khandhas, one attains joy and delight. For those who know this is the deathless. The starting point for an insightful bhikkhu is guarding the senses, contentment, restraint according to the monastic rules, and associating with good spiritual friends who live purely and untiringly. If one is friendly by habit and skillful in conduct, one will have much delight and bring an end to suffering. As jasmine sheds its withered flowers, so bhikkhus shed passion and aversion. Peaceful in body, peaceful in speech. The bhikkhu, peaceful and well concentrated, who has rejected the world's bait, is called one at peace. Admonish yourself. Control yourself. O bhikkhu self-guarded and mindful, you will live happily. Oneself indeed is one's own protector. One does indeed make one's own destiny. Therefore, control yourself as a merchant does a fine horse. A bhikkhu filled with delight and pleased with the Buddha's teachings attains happiness, the stillness of formations, the state of peace. Engaged in the Buddha's teachings, even a young bhikkhu lights up this world, like the moon set free from a cloud. Chapter 26. The Brahmin. Strive and cut off the stream, O Brahmin, dispel sensual craving. Knowing the ending of all formations, you, Brahmin, will know the unmade. When with tranquility and insight the Brahmin reaches the other shore, then for that knowing one, all fetters come to their end. Whoever is untied and free of distress, and for whom neither a beyond or not beyond, nor a both beyond and not beyond exists, I call a Brahmin. Whoever is seated, absorbed in meditation, done what had to be done, free of contaminants, who has reached the highest goal, I call a Brahmin. The sun shines by day, the moon glows at night. The warrior shines in his armor. The Brahmin shines in meditative absorption. But all day and all night, the Buddha shines in splendor. Having banished evil, one is called a Brahmin. Living peacefully, one is called a renunciant. Having driven out one's own impurities, one is called one who has gone forth. One should not strike a Brahmin, and a Brahmin should not set anger loose. Shame on the one who hits a Brahmin, and greater shame on the one who sets anger loose. For the Brahmin, Nothing is better than restraining the mind from what it cherishes. Whenever one turns away from the intent to harm, suffering is allayed. Whoever does no ill through body, speech, and mind, and is restrained in these three areas, I call a Brahmin. As a Brahmin worships a ritual fire, one should respectfully worship anyone from whom one might learn the Dharma of the fully self-awakened one. Not by matted hair, not by clan, not by birth does one become a Brahmin. The one in whom there is truth and Dharma is the one who is pure, is a Brahmin. Fool, what use is matted hair? What use is a deerskin robe? The tangled jungle is within you, and you groom the outside. Someone robed in discarded rags, lean with veins showing, alone in the forest, absorbed in meditation, I call a Brahmin. I call no one a Brahmin for being born from a womb, from a mother. Someone who has anything is called self-important. Whoever has nothing and does not cling, I call a Brahmin. Whoever, having cut off every fetter, does not tremble, is unbound and beyond attachment, I call a Brahmin. Whoever awakened has cut the strap, thong, cord, and bridle and lifted up the crossbar, I call a Brahmin. Whoever endures abuse, assault, and imprisonment without animosity, whoever has forbearance as one's strength, as one's mighty army, I call a Brahmin. Whoever is without anger or craving, observant in spiritual practice and virtue, self-controlled, and in one's final body, I call a Brahmin. Like water on a lotus leaf, or a mustard seed on the tip of an awl, whoever does not cling to sensual craving, I call a Brahmin. Whoever knows right here the end of suffering, who is unburdened and unbound, I call a Brahmin. Whoever is wise, of profound insight, understanding what is and isn't the path, and who has attained the highest goal, I call a Brahmin. Whoever is not mixed up with householders or renunciants, who has no abode and few desires, I call a Brahmin. Having given up violence towards beings both timid and strong, whoever neither kills nor causes other to kill, I call a Brahmin. Whoever is unopposing among those who oppose, peaceful among the violent, not clinging among those who cling, I call a Brahmin. Whoever lets passion, aversion, conceit, and hypocrisy fall away, like a mustard seed from the tip of an awl, I call a Brahmin. Whoever speaks what is true, informative, and not harsh, who gives offense to no one, I call a Brahmin. Whoever in this world takes nothing not given, whether it is long or short, large or small, beautiful or not, I call a Brahmin. Whoever has no longing for this world or the beyond, who is unbound and without longing, I call a Brahmin. Having no attachments and through understanding, free of doubts, whoever is established in the deathless, I call Brahmin. Whoever here has overcome attachments for both merit and evil, and who is sorrowless, dustless, and pure, I call a Brahmin. Whoever, like the moon, is spotless, pure, clear, and undisturbed, in whom the delight for existence is extinct, I call a Brahmin. Whoever has passed beyond this troublesome road, this difficult path, this samsara, this delusion, who has crossed over, gone beyond, who is a meditator, free of craving and doubt, without clinging, released, I call a Brahmin. Whoever, having given up passion here, would go forth as a homeless one, in whom the passion for existence is extinct, I call a Brahmin. Whoever, having given up craving here, would go forth as a homeless one, in whom the craving for existence is extinct, I call a Brahmin. Whoever, having given up human bondage, has gone beyond heavenly bondage, is unbound from all bondage, I call a Brahmin. Whoever, having given up liking and disliking, has become cooled without attachments, a hero overcoming the entire world, I call a Brahmin. Whoever knows in every way the passing away and reappearing of beings, and is unattached, awakened, and well gone, I call a Brahmin. An Arahant, whose destination is not known by gods, Gandhabas, or humans, whose toxins are extinct, I call a Brahmin. One for whom nothing exists, in front, behind, and in between, who has no clinging, who has nothing, I call a Brahmin. Whoever is most excellent, a bull, a hero, a great sage, a conqueror, free of craving, cleansed, awakened, I call a Brahmin. Whoever knows one's own former lives, sees both the heavens and states of woe, has attained the end of birth, is a sage, perfected in the higher knowledges, and has perfected all perfections, I call a Brahmin. The end.